Testing, testing, testing the closed captions. Testing the closed captions.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. First up, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next up, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, Mr. Superintendent, Andy, comments from the public.
Tonight, we have one public comment. It is from Mei Yi. She makes the following points: express concern about low reading and math scores in elementary schools, and particularly at Waverly Elementary. Asked what the steps the district is taking to improve reading and math scores. Requested response and answers to questions be on the agenda for discussion and public information. Expressed appreciation for hard work, dedication, and leadership for the success of students. We also would express our appreciation to Ms. Yi for her continued caring for the outcomes that the students get in the Greater Albany School District. Mr. Schmidt, our Assistant Superintendent, will be sharing some of the outcomes here in just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, nothing in board business. Superintendent's comments for superintendent report.
So tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the work we're doing with teachers in the Cell 5D. You guys have a copy of the Cell 5D in front of you, as well as the 5D Plus, which is the new rubric. And so you can kind of ask some questions when we're done. I noted that when I put it together. That's why we took away a lot of the slides, small font and multiple. So what you're looking at on the wall or on the board there is the members of last year's collaborative steering committee. And this was something that we set up in February of last year. It had teachers from different levels and administrators from different levels and at the district office. Also included the president of GAEA at that time, Todd Zimmerman. Dana stepped in upon Todd leaving the district. We also have the classified president, Liz Craig. Basically, our work there is development of an overall vision and framework for adult and student learning in gaps. It's based around 5 critical things that need to occur in all of our classrooms. It lays out a vision for what we want our classrooms to look like. It defines the ideal characteristics of classroom instruction and puts them into 5 dimensions, which we believe can create greater focus. The first one is the purpose of the lesson. Very important for students to assess their own learning, take control of their own learning, to understand what they're being taught, and if they own it, if they've learned it. Student engagement is very important. Conversations with each other to develop meaning. The curriculum and pedagogy, the structure of the lesson so that it can bring students through to learning the purpose. That we are assessing students as we teach them towards that target, purpose. And then our classroom environment and culture. And those are being taught in a different order than I've just gone through them. But the core ideas basically are that we have 4 basic categories for the performance level of a teacher, and that we can use this to move teachers to the right to where they can be proficient, and then hopefully they can spend some time in distinguished as well. And it's also really important that we know, we're looking at the 4 stages here. Let's just put them all up. There is unconscious incompetence, unaware of the skill or concept, or rarely or never use it. Conscious incompetence, they're aware of the skill, but it's still just emerging as a practice. Then there is conscious competence, aware and able to consistently use the skill. And then finally, unconscious, where it's just easy, unconscious competence, it becomes easy and it's a habit that you begin to integrate all of this. And this is the challenge. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end, right? But what we want to do is we want to move people to the right in their practice across these things. And so specific performance language, what's in those blocks, defines the levels of expertise along a continuum of practice. And so when you look through there, you will note that there's no way that any of you could walk away tonight and say, I'm really comfortable with everything that is there, right? So we have to spend time teaching this, practicing it, giving feedback, and we want, as well as the students, to begin to be more familiar with what they're supposed to be learning. We want to help teachers slowly begin to integrate these things into their practice. When we get to next year, evaluators will rate each teacher's practice based on a preponderance of evidence and consideration of growth over time. So when we look across all these 5, there could be teachers that have 70% of them at a level 3 or 4, but there may be some that they are still moving on. But that is all a process of growth for a teacher, because this is not all going to happen overnight just by adding water. It's going to take time and support in the learning. Let's keep going, Chris. So this year, because of the complexity and the learning that we have to do, we are not going to be evaluating contract teachers this year. It will be reflective on the part of the teachers to understand where they are on the standard. We will be conducting mini observations and giving some feedback, and we will align evidence from what we see in the classroom to indicators. That would be a give and take between the principal and that teacher this year, and not evaluative. We will also be spending time noticing and wondering, identifying evidence, and then pose questions related to the area. We will not score the mini observations for contract teachers. What we really want to do is have the teacher say, well, here's a couple things I could do that I think, look, I'll be a 3 if I do those things, right? So it becomes a shift to the teacher. Probationary teachers, we will be evaluating teachers this year, only because the renewal, non-renewal status for probationary is different than contract teachers. We'll conduct mini observations as well, the same script, and then we will analyze and sort evidence of practice, what the teacher can do, what they are on the verge of, and what they are far from. So we're going to give those teachers that feedback. And with probationary, they need to be at least 20 minutes by contract. We will do 4 observations. We'll score the mini observations. And then we would let human resources know if there's something that is leading to a possible non-extension of a contract. So here's our cell training. The first one we've already done, classroom environment and culture, which is the 5th of those listed in the first slide. But the cell trainer believes that that is one of the most easy to get a hold of and understand. And so we're going to start there. And then we'll move on October 29th to student engagement, November 19th purpose, January 21st assessment, February 25th curriculum and pedagogy, and then we will spend time between the presentation of each month's subject. We will then begin to move towards a more formative, like, what does this look like as we go forward next year? And so a teacher then is going to be able to pick a couple of areas that they can work to improve on in the coming year. So we're really excited about it's kind of a hiatus from the judgment, and it's more about learning. The principals as well are going to be engaged in a lot of learning, and so this same University of Washington Center for Educational Leadership also has a rubric for administrators that kind of dovetails with this. But our first priority is that our principals will know this very well, right? And so that is kind of the year in recap. So by the end of the year, we would hope that we would have a teacher administrator meeting that summarizes where the teacher believes they are, so that we can then move forward and progress towards improving. And then we just want to be in a continual state of reflection and improvement as we go forward. Is there another slide? So this was the very first meeting that we held where we trained on the classroom environment and culture. We located a room and we packed the room, and you can see up there under the TV, the guy with the bald head. Colin is our trainer. He is from Michigan, and he got pretty excited as we began to talk about this with him. About halfway through the morning, he came over to me and said, "This group is awesome. They are ready, they are attentive, and they are working hard, and I'm super excited." And so now he's kind of caught that this looks to be a successful implementation. And so what they are doing in that photo is they are watching a classroom as that video is unfolding. So he's not just taking time off from teaching. They are, and you can just see everybody's head. They're pretty attentive to what's going on there. So we have several more of those. The next one, again, October 29th, for purpose. What happens then is the people in this room, lead teachers and administrators, then turn around and teach that next month. And then they spend a month looking for it, right? And so it's a slow process, but I think if you're going to do something like this, you need to front load it and do a really good job teaching that. Let's go to, is that it? Yep. Awesome. Do you guys have any questions about that?
Yeah, I had a couple. The first one, just to clarify, so for contract teachers, they won't have a formal observation or formal evaluation, but they're gonna interact with the rubric through a self-evaluation and then feedback on many observations. It just won't be a form, but so they'll have gone through the rubric this year. They just won't have a formal evaluation.
Yeah, but
Okay.
what we're also really trying to do is shift it to a reflective sense, right? So I know, like, we did a lot of classroom observations in Staten, and the teachers would send me an email within 2 hours saying, "Can you give me some feedback?" Right? And so it would be suggestive, it would be appreciative, but we never said, "Oh, I thought you were a 3," right?
Yeah.
So they would be the ones who would begin to think, "I don't think I meet all the things in the box that is proficient."
Okay.
Right? And so we really want to shift that to where the teacher is in control of that and thinking about improving.
And part of the training is how your principals draw that out.
So it is a
conversations.
related training, and we are using the book, Reflective Practices in Education, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that, a lot of role playing,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
And then the second question was, contract teachers only get evaluated every other year. You're not doing any this year. I assume you're not gonna do all of them next year. You'll still stagger?
Yeah, we'll still stagger it, but
Okay.
I think the most important thing, I believe that our teachers, in the presence of those categories, and that they are research-based, will, just the idea that, oh, this is what good teaching looks like. I have a huge amount of faith that teachers, when they see that, will go, "Hey, I'm not doing that. I can do that," right? And how would we do that? And I think it begins to, it's just a more powerful way to think about teaching and learning in the district, right? So whatever we would turn over to students to begin to understand and identify whether they've learned it, I think it's also important that we similarly reflect that to teachers as well.
And that stuff goes on every year, not just the year that they're in formal eval. The off year, they also will do some of that work.
Yeah, and we
Okay.
will see a bunch of teachers all the time, because what we will want to do is we will want to begin to have feedback where people are reflecting. The more opportunities that someone has to reflect about this, I think then we get away from the idea that we fall into habits and don't think about taking something new on, or I can tweak this, whatever.
Okay.
So, and I think it mirrors a little bit the TIF grant that you,
Yeah,
Susie,
similar.
and some others did. Yeah. Any other questions?
No, I don't have any. I think it's great that we're implementing a system, and this will be a good one.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, or is still you on student enrollment, I guess?
Yeah, and I'll defer to Bruce. Do we have that down yet?
Yeah, give me a second.
We, just as kind of an overview, we are seeing roughly the same numbers, but last year's numbers are, have a couple of idiosyncrasies that we cannot tease out that person is no longer here. We do have some changes in enrollment. We have situational or single school, single grade level that has grown, which is a good thing. We also have other buildings that have diminished in enrollment. We are about par. So at this time, that is basically where we are. Bruce, anything to add to that?
Would you like me to give specific numbers at each level?
Sure. Because we were going to wait? Yeah, we can hold off.
Okay.
I think that there is a discrepancy between last year's numbers and this year's numbers that we have not yet completely teased out and identified. But I believe that what we are seeing is about the same, but different in some of the buildings.
I guess my only concern would be, because we're hearing from some parents, the idea that, like you said, one school might have a whole bunch of kindergartens, another one doesn't. Has it got to the point that we've had to move staff around a little bit, or what have we done to
So
accomplish?
we are in the process of that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So last board meeting, I thought you said, we were kind of, or no, somebody said we might be 65 kids down. Has that worked itself out back to par?
Well, I am only speaking tonight about the number of bodies,
Oh, not 80, okay.
right, and not ADMR,
Gotcha.
which
Okay.
is still a little bit down.
Okay.
So by the time you take the number of kids, you reduce the number of high school kids that aren't quite full or whatever, which costs us, then you are still down a little bit.
So how does our rough numbers compare to the other rough numbers in our comparable districts?
Of enrollment.
Correct.
So I can only speak about Corvallis. They are 90 below their projection. Their projection is on a downward slide anyway, just due to lack of development and enrollment there. And that's really happening at the elementary levels there.
So I do hope to have the first period ADMR that will compare to the budget for the next board meeting.
Thank you.
So then, with your permission, Mr. Chair, we'll move to the license bargaining update.
Okay.
Before we do that, though, I do want to circle around and just talk a little bit about the Sunrise Elementary issue last week, which was a growing illness that occurred Wednesday and then became acute on Thursday, and we shut the building down on Friday. We had a growing number of staff that were out on Thursday. By about noon, we saw that there were multiple kids that were waiting to go home, and some had already left the building. Lynn County Health had chosen, and we never did get confirmation, to treat it as norovirus. And so the school was closed on Friday. I want to express my appreciation. Dave Bolin had let me know on Wednesday night that he had sent, like, the custodians had already been all over it and had sent a big crew there to clean the building, but that did not really arrest it on Thursday. It was still cycling up. The staff, we went over there on Thursday. Kelly Bizard came from the district office to help with lunch, as did their secretary down there. I know we sent a secretary. No, we sent a secretary as well over to help. But at the lunch, I was really impressed with the number of teachers that gave up their lunch to come in and help. And it was just an all-hands-on-deck experience, and seemed to work, because by Monday, other than normal absences, all were present and accounted for, and it had somewhat passed through. I'll knock wood, but I thought it was great. So with bargaining, we met last Tuesday for mediation. We have mediation scheduled again on October 25th and a second session on November 4th. I do want to point out that even in between the meetings, we found progress was really helped by some side work groups where we really focused on one or two issues. And we're working right now to get a few of those scheduled on some of the items that are outstanding. We understand that behavior continues to be a focus and a concern for teachers. We'll be working on that. And Bruce has done a great job so far this year of really monitoring where the issues are and we're looking at some moves to be made, placements, and we're also spending a lot more time trying to get people into buildings to support people with behavior. Finally, I would note that the September Western States CPI, Consumer Price Index, is published now, and the annual percentage rate, September 2024, looking back to 2023, is 2.1%. And so I think as we're looking to have an offer that catches people up, the offer gets better as the inflation rates drop. And I think that exceeded expectations. Hopefully we don't see a rise again, but there seems to be a commitment on the Fed's part that they will continue to look for a lower cost of living. And we're happy to see that happen. It will not change the offer. The offer in terms of being able to catch people up against inflation just improves as a result of that. That's all I have. Questions?
Doesn't look like it. Okay, next up, board reports.
Oh, sorry. Got you wet.
Sean, anything?
Sorry.
Okay. Brad?
I got a couple things. Just been hearing that mediation, both sides are talking, and there's been some good progress towards coming to a thing. And just to remind everybody that bargaining is a long process. But the good part about it allows both sides to find some common ground and to move forward following the adoption of the new contract. So we're all looking forward to that happening, and keeping our students in classrooms. I noticed on the latest Oregon Educational News today, there's a national effort to put more adults in schools as tutors. And the White House had called for that, and there was like 360,000 parents nationwide that had gone to the schools and whatnot. And I'm wondering if it's something that we could look at doing to try to expedite getting some parents and adults in classrooms as tutors to try to help with reading, especially since the third grade, third grade is the time where they need to be proficient in reading. So if we concentrated on kindergarten through third grade, we might be able to improve some scores down the line. So something I'd like us to take a peek at. And third, I want to give a shout out to Dave Bolin and his crew. The flagpole last year at Clover Ridge was suffering, and we couldn't always get the flag to fly. And this year, I'm proud to say that every time I drive out by it, because I live out that way, I drive by, the flag has been flying proudly. And Dave, I talked to him about it a little bit before, and he just said, well, I'm glad I got taken care of. It's just one of those things that's just another work order. But to me, it's important. And so thank you so much for getting that done. I really, really appreciate it.
Okay. I just think, we're a little over a month into school now, and it's really good to have students back in school. Our district staff are reporting our district is making positive progress in academics, behavior, attendance, et cetera. And I think here in a little bit, Bruce is going to show us that scores and metrics are showing that to be true as well, which is great. We've been past COVID, everything was down and it was all catch up, but it's kind of nice to see the ramp up, and that's really exciting to see. Unfortunately, public education in our state has a few issues going on. I'm very hopeful that our teachers union will work with our district leadership to get increased funding from our state to help districts like Greater Albany Public Schools meet our students' needs better. I 100% understand and think our teachers are doing a great job, and the challenges that confront a teacher now are different than even just a few years ago. And that's really important for us to understand. And it's part of the problem that we have with the funding formula we have from our state. It's adequate. It's old, and our teachers and our students are different now than they used to be. I'm going to hold out hope that our district can work together with our unions and other districts in the state to both increase education funding as well as improve state laws and policies to enable our educators to achieve a superior environment for the education of our youth. I think some of the tools that educators used to have don't exist, and it'd be good to get some of those back. Unfortunately, a lot of those are controlled by the state, but I think it's worth trying to get them. Okay. Our student board members, ladies.
So first for West Albany, this week is homecoming week. So there's different spirit costumes that students can wear all throughout this week. Today was bikers versus surfers. Tomorrow is barbecue dads versus soccer moms. Wednesday is spirit out. Thursday is dress like your grade. And Friday is PJ day. There's a homecoming football game Friday versus Lebanon. And a Powder Puff game October 16th. There's a band concert Thursday and a jazz dinner night at 6 Tuesday. Chess club is always after school on Wednesdays in the library, and there's the homecoming dance Saturday at 8.
For South Albany, so far we again changed our schedule just due to our teacher and student necessities. We noticed that teachers needed more prep time and it wasn't given to them, as well as students did not have another break time for like socialization and breakfast, since most don't have breakfast early in the morning. So we again changed our schedule for this week. This is our first week trying this new schedule. The new schedule changes from Friday to Thursday kind of style, so we're gonna actually see how it works out this Wednesday and Thursday with the shortcut of time. Instead of 90 minutes, it will be like 75 minutes Wednesday and Thursday. So that's our new change. We also have homecoming this week, so we have a lot of spirit days going on, but that's all for South Albany.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up, community and school presentations. Looks like we have none. Consent agenda, personnel classified.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve personnel classified as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, minutes, regular board meeting 9/23/24.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, old business. Next up, board policy updates. Andy.
Yeah, the first one is what we discussed at the last meeting, second reading. So there is a motion there, recommend to approve. It's just the requirement that board members report.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve policy BBFC as presented.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, J1B, next up.
Second one, again, has a recommendation to approve. This defines meeting and what it is and what it isn't. It's just an update. Recommend to approve.
Chris, this is the meeting law that's changing that we're going to get training on and, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve policy BD/BDA as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
I have a question.
Discussion.
Care to tell us what it is and what it means now?
Yeah, it requires that you attend a training at least once in your term as a board member. It also stipulates more closely what a meeting is. It does discuss a little bit about what is not discoverable, what is, like what personal phone calls are not, but it is just an update broadly
Takes effect when?
upon, I think, your vote.
And so a board member has how long then to attend this training on what a meeting is, on what a public meeting is after 24 years of conducting public meetings? I'm not feeling the love here.
So it would be during your term, you would need to do it.
Go ahead, Chris.
The training is specifically around the new requirement on public meeting law violations that now go to the board first. That's what the training is about, is how the process of how those work. So it's not.
We're not redefining a public meeting.
No.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so is this kind of a Zoom training meeting? Do we know what it'll be, or is
It's
it
going
in
to be
person?
I think
in
there's-
person.
I think it's in person, and they're doing
We're
it
trying to
LVL.
get Lincoln and Lincoln is trying to coordinate an in-person one. It's looking like it'll be December or January before we have the availability to do it. OGEC has a lot of requests for them. They do have training starting already, but we recommend that you wait until December, January, just because it's new and
We could wait longer.
with all new things, they're gonna iron some of the,
Longer's okay.
so,
I
yeah.
just-
Yeah, and you only have to do it once per term,
Correct.
Well,
just to clarify.
we've made a motion and discussed, and we kind of voted, and I said, wait a minute, I think that there's a bit of a flaw in the rule as it's presented. Not that I'm going to trigger the problem with it, but there's 7, 8, 9, 10 months, depending on how much is left. And so if I don't get that done during that, what are you going to do, kick me off on the last day? I mean, how's that going to work?
No.
Okay, I'll just be in violation. Thank you. Not that I intend to do that.
So we already voted on that, correct? I believe, okay. So, all right, J1C, BDC.
Yeah, I'm scrolling down to it. Hang on just a second. Again, these are related mostly to the board tonight. The first one was board members with child abuse. The second is the Oregon Government Ethics Commission requirement. The third one is an expansion of the things that you may use as a reason to go into executive session. And obviously, the two things that are now going to be added to the number of things you can go legally into executive session are to consider matters relating to the safety of the governing body and of public body staff and volunteers and the security of public body facilities and meeting spaces. That is out of a concern that someone watching that could see what you're doing could then take action to move around that. And the 10th is matters relating to cybersecurity, because that also is watched by districts. We know that people who are looking to in some way ransom the district or things like that do a really good job of understanding how much money is available. They examine the documents. If we were to share openly what steps we are taking, then they know that just gives them something to work with. And so those are now matters for executive session that are added as a result of this. Recommend to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve policy BDC as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm opposed.
Oh,
I
okay,
didn't get discussion.
okay.
Further
Roger,
discussion.
go ahead. What
I'm
would you like?
sorry, so this relates to executive session, right?
Yes.
I hope the preference of the board is to not have them. Having been around local government and executive sessions for a while, inevitably it's where things go wrong. And even if they don't go wrong, the public doesn't know they didn't go wrong because they weren't there to see them. So it's just my hope, and I would encourage the board to use the opportunity to go into executive session sparingly.
Yes. I don't think any of us want to go into it more than we need to. Okay, I don't think we got done with that. Any more discussion? Okay,
You can go ahead and call the vote, I think.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I, with the caveat that we won't use it unless we absolutely have to.
Okay, Roger the caveat. Any opposed? None? Okay, here we go. Next one is J1D.
Yeah, this policy again relates to board actions related to the superintendent. The change is that a board cannot, by vote or direction, have the superintendent do something that is against state law. And I think that was one of the things that you made clear when I came.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to break law.
I think this just codifies our agreement.
Yep.
Which, yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Any more discussion on this one?
Who gets to decide what's against the law?
I have a
Any guesses?
clarification question.
Huh?
So which law is precedent, local, state, or federal?
Yeah, that was a good question.
Never got an answer.
Yeah, I think if we have the governor issue an executive order, something like that, I would consider that law. The national law is sometimes is played out in decisions by the state, by state courts. So I think that we would look at all of them. I would probably not be disposed to intentionally violate any of them, Sean.
What are you gonna do when they conflict?
My advice would be to see what the attorney says. I mean, if it's me, I would ask my attorney what the law was, right?
So there are teachers in the audience who would say that when they put out their classroom rules, that the discussion sometimes is at this level. What are you going to do if we don't, right? So I would just say that in good faith, we would look at that, Roger, as we came, we would discuss it with attorneys, and we would make the best decision possible.
Because they do conflict from time to time. That's a problem.
Right.
Big problem.
But also, a lot of times in legal precedents, there's a very clear priority in which it takes place when they conflict, right? It's usually the most restrictive is the one that holds, but it changes, which is why you check with the attorney and they'll tell you. That's what I would recommend doing.
So the answer to the question is, to my who decides, the attorney decides.
That would be my vote, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve policy CB as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, next up is reports, business financial. Jane.
So tonight, we were just going to provide a brief update of the GAPS Best and Final Offer, which is a process that we're in right now. And Susie's going to start with just some of the language.
So I just wanted to share with you a little bit about, after our first mediation, we did 3 small work groups with the union, and super positive on just finding out what is it that we're missing in the language, and what is really important and why you think it is, so that we could both have a good understanding. And we went to the second mediation, and we were able to TA, which is have tentative agreements on 11 articles. And that was really positive. We're moving in a really positive direction. We, again, will do small work groups. We have 3 weeks now to the next mediation, and we will be doing some more small work groups so we can totally understand where each other are coming from on articles. And we have our next mediation on 10/25, and then we have another one scheduled on 11/4 as well. So there is 2 more mediations, and we really feel confident that we can get agreement between us. They have 4 priorities that they've made really clear, and their safe working conditions for students and staff is number 1. And we're really working on putting together a good article and on special education and behavior, and really trying to put committees in place so that they're ongoing and we can make sure that we are addressing them all the time. And then their second one is workload and professional opportunities, and we're really trying to work on prep time and the articles that affect workload. And then their third is health and benefits, and of course we're working on compensation and then retention and recruitment of educators, and that's just all encompassing in the in our collective bargaining agreement, and really believe that if we have a good contract and a good package for our teachers, we'll be able to keep our teachers and do a good job of recruiting. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update, and I think that the small groups have really helped us. And like I said, our last mediation, we had 11 tentative agreements. And so that was a good day.
Sounds real good.
So I wanted to provide just a little bit of the financial numbers. If you are questioned, you would know kind of what our offer meant. So the COLA that we're offering, it says between 14 and 17%. And the 14% is the majority of the salary schedule. But it's been a priority of the district to catch up the most senior employees who comparatively with our comparative districts are behind. And so for each year, we added an additional COLA to the top of the salary schedule. So that's where the 17 comes from. And that makes a big difference. And so it's a teacher on the top will receive about a $5,000 increase for 24-25 and another $5,000 increase for 25-26. So our goal of trying to catch them up comparatively is why we chose that extra COLA on all 3 years.
Question?
Yeah.
So my understanding, looking at the charts and stuff, is our brand-new teacher coming in is very competitive.
Yes.
Towards the top. But where we've been missing is at the top, due to
That's
the longevity
correct.
and stuff. So basically what we're saying is we're, over 3 years, we're adding 3% to the more senior teachers.
Yes.
Sounds great.
And another area that we have struggled is being able to fill some of our harder to fill positions, such as nurses. And nurses were not on the licensed salary schedule. And so we are moving them to the licensed salary schedule. And so that's an increase over 3 years of approximately $15,000 for the nurses. And we think that will make a big difference for the district, as well as the employees.
What schedule do you have them on, fact?
Pardon?
What schedule were they on?
It's called a FACT schedule.
I'm familiar. Okay. The first nurse we ever hired, fun fact, didn't have a master's degree, so the licensing, anyway, it was tricky. That's good. I'm
Yes.
glad you're cleaning it up. It was a mess when we first hired nurses, so.
And then Susie mentioned that we are trying to change the way we are working with our teachers. We're having more committees, and so for safety and some of the articles that Susie mentioned, it will mean additional committee pay. And so I just wanted to go over a little bit of what that means. Currently, a teacher during the 191-day contract year who attends a committee outside their workday is paid what we call committee pay. And it has been last year, $34.03. So what we did was take the middle of the salary scale, because there are teachers from all different steps on attending the meeting. So we took the middle, which is $40. And so that would be an increase from $34.03 to $40. And for 23-24, we paid $341,000 in committee pay. So it will be a significant increase for us. If we just didn't increase the hours, which we are intending to do, that would go up to $401,000. But we just really believe the work that we're doing, like collaborative steering and the safety committee, and meeting with our teachers on planning for the safety of students is really important, and so the additional committee pay is important. Are there any other questions?
Go ahead, Ryan.
And I could be completely wrong about this, but I thought committee pay currently was calculated based off of something like one hour of sub time or something. It was attached to something. That wasn't just a number that existed.
We have not had that understanding. It's just been a flat rate.
Okay.
And I don't know that it has moved.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question. Does it have something built in to move it with? Okay.
Oh, yeah, there are 3 years here with it, $5 more per year.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
sorry.
Ryan, you're right. And so we're trying to increase committee pay because we want to continue to have not just teacher voice during bargaining, but all year long. And so that we can do the collaborative steering committee, we can have a committee that works on behavior, and so that we can check in all the time and improve our systems along the way, not just during certain times of the year.
Just a few years back, like steering committee went away, right? And we brought it back.
Well, the Collaborative Steering Committee is a new committee. We did some other things, but Andy brought the Collaborative Steering Committee together,
Right.
and it's been really positive.
Yeah.
Positive.
It would seem like it would be.
Yeah, I think years ago, I know that there was a
Years
TIF
ago,
grant,
they had one, yes.
but I don't know that that was everyone. That was more of a selected, like, focus group of schools that were doing that work, or was that district-wide?
Are you talking about AIM? I don't know what you're talking, I don't know what
The
committee.
TIF grant,
No, the TIF grant is
where
what I
you
think
guys
he's talking about.
calibrated on your scores and went out and watched, was that everybody, or was that just?
No, it's just a small group of people.
Okay. Yeah, so we just want to turn that into a district-wide way we do things.
And that was only on evaluation, and this is on all structures and systems.
Yeah, because the TIF grant had specific schools in it. It wasn't all the schools.
Okay.
I have one other question. Ryan, were you done? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
So my understanding, the COLA page on the back says 3 or 4. I thought that was tied to also like a cost of living here in the
Yeah,
western
in the third
states or
year,
something.
in the third year, we proposed that we would tie that to COLA.
Okay.
It has a range.
Okay, good.
Right.
So I mean,
But no
if
matter what that-
inflation goes up, they're not tied into that.
Yeah, and so it would increase, but the key point is that the teachers at the top, whatever that would result in.
They're gonna get a point
They're
more.
gonna get a point difference.
Right.
On that.
No, I just didn't see, so that range, from what I understood, last paperwork I saw was going to be 3 to 5, depending on whatever the
The CPIU, yep.
number
But no
was.
lower, I think, than 3.
No lower than
Is that
3, no higher than 5.
Yeah.
Correct. Right, okay. Thank you. Okay. Bruce, you're up.
I got to do a few clicks of the mouse here to see if I can get this rolling. Oopsie, just happened. Uh-oh, I made a blunder. Sorry, I was queued up in the middle of the presentation. I was getting a little excited. Excuse me? We'll figure it out. Good evening, everyone. I have the pleasure of presenting some information on our student performance in terms of state testing, where we've been over the course of the last 5 years, and where we're hoping to head in the next year and the years to come. So this information is based on the 23-24 school year, so we're going back in time. And just to give you an idea of what our district is composed of, in the 23-24 school year, we served 8,723 students. Here's the general demographic breakdown. 15% of students that were receiving second language services. 15% of our students were identified as having an IEP or a student with a disability. 13% of our district was listed as students with mobility, meaning they moved from one school to the other or from one district to the other. 43 different languages are spoken in our school district, and 36% of our students are experiencing poverty. If we look here, this gives a general breakdown of demographic. I have this a little bit broken down in more detail. What I do want to point out is based on the demographic of our schools, 90% of our teachers are white in comparison to 65% of our students representing as white. This is the snapshot of data that you'll see on the at-a-glance report card from the state. It points out some major indicators that we look at and the state looks at. And we have some great information to share. We'll get a little bit more granular as we move on. But I do want to point out that we showed 67% of our students as regular attenders. That means they're attending 90% of the school year or more. That's an increase of 10 percentage points from the 22-23 school year. We're pretty proud of that. ELA in third grade, we posted 42%, which is 2 percentage points above the state average and a 6% increase from the year before. 25% of our 8th grade students showed proficiency in math, which is a 1% increase from the previous year and 2 percentage points lower than the state. Our students on track to graduate, that means at the end of their 9th grade year, they're earning 6 credits or more. That's a major indicator, as that's a predictor of our graduation rate. We posted 75%, and that's no change from the previous year. Our on-time graduation rate is 82%. This is a misrepresentation. We know through validation that we were at 84% as a district. So I do want to point that out, even though it's not correct on this. That was corrected through validation. And then 93% of our students are a 5-year completer rate. So those that don't graduate in 4 years, we work with those students to graduate in a 5th year. That's an increase of 4% from the previous year and above the state average. So that's also good. We're managing to capture our students in that 5th year if they don't finish in 4. Okay? This is the breakdown specifically of our demographics within the district. It was kind of hard to see with that initial snapshot. It shows that the majority of students in our district are white. Second, 24% Hispanic. 2 or more is at 8%. And then all the rest of our demography is broken down to 1% or less. Okay, it gets really difficult to break that down with fractions of a percentage. The other important demographics to look at are students with disabilities at 15%, our ELD students, 15%, our students that suffer homelessness are at 2%, and then our students experiencing poverty are at 36%. We need to make sure that we're factoring all those other things into the mix, as that shows the level of differentiation and special need that we have within our student body. And that all factors into how we work with our students each day in schools. The state looks at several factors when forming these accountability details. We have achievement data. That's your typical state testing, graduation rate, on track to becoming English proficient. And then we look at change data each year in English language arts, math, and attendance. So we look from 1 year to the next. And then the next thing we're measured on is our participation rate in state testing for English language arts and math. Okay, so it's not just the score performance, it's other performance indicators as well that we're measuring. Some major points of pride that we have. An 84% graduation rate, that's 3 percentage points above the state average, and again, that's district-wide. Our 93% completer rate, which is 6% above the state average. Our 3rd grade language arts, we increased 6%, and it is 2% above the state average. And then we had some big improvement in our regular attenders. We had an increase of 10% as the district. That's 1% above the state average. But as I explained in an earlier board meeting, we ran a pilot program at Waverly, Sunrise, Calapooya, and Memorial. Each of those schools showed significant increases. If you recall, I said those were projected until we had data that was no longer embargoed. So Waverly had a 19% increase. Sunrise had an 18% increase, with the 2 middle schools posting a 14.4% increase in attendance. This year, all of those schools are going to year 2, and we'll be working with Ross Davis of the ESD. And then we're adding Oak Elementary School in year 1 of that pilot, and both NAMS and Timber Ridge are gonna go year 1 at the middle school level. We will be meeting this week. All principals in the district will come to a collaborative group meeting to talk about general attendance practices and to kind of share out what our pilot schools are going to be doing and to share strategies that they may all use in all of our schools in the district to address our attendance. Okay? Some major points of priority we have going into this year are focusing more intently on our 9th grade on-track rate, 3rd grade language arts, regular attendance as I've just described, and 8th grade math. Now, we all know that it's most important to read at 3rd grade. We know that math is a culmination of many years of instruction measured in that 8th grade year. So we'll be focusing on math K-8 to see if we can close some of those gaps over the next few years. Okay? All districts must have a district improvement plan that addresses longitudinal performance growth targets. That's, and you'll see some graphs and some things later on. I'll try to explain that. But what we have to do is we have to set long-range targets where we have baseline, which is the minimum growth that we want to see each year. We have to set what's called a stretch goal, meaning, hey, if we go above and beyond, how much more can we earn? And then we have to have a gap closing measure for our students that are traditionally, that they have a gap in performance between all students and then some of our focus subgroups. So we also have to set a goal to closing those performance gaps over the course of time. All right? I'll share that information a little bit later, but I just wanted to mention kind of where we're going to go in this presentation. These are our major focal groups. These are the subgroups that we look at in our data, and these are students that are traditionally underserved or have traditionally underperformed in comparison to the white students in the district. Okay? I'll leave this up for a second, and then we'll kind of move through. Where we've been. This charts over the course of the last 5 years and kind of where we're going to go in the future. I did not include graduation data because that will not be released until January. And then I'm sure we'll have a formalized presentation on our graduation rates from Albany options, from South and from West. I will give them the opportunity to share that information. And then in addition, if we have a more detailed presentation on graduation rates when they're released in January. Okay? In terms of 9th grade on track, we didn't show an increase this year. We remained consistent at 75%. I did share that we showed an increase in 3rd grade language arts of 6%. We showed a 2 percentage point increase in 5th grade math. I did want to include that. And then a 67%, which is a 10% increase in attendance across the district. I was asked to put together what the growth looks like over the course of time, because all you see is 3rd grade English language arts, and that's not the same group of kids. So I wanted to try to demonstrate how our students grow each year they move through our system. So we did show that 6% point increase from one 3rd grade year to a new group of 3rd grade students. But if you look, students moving from 3rd grade in 2022-23 to 4th grade in 23-24, you see a 2 percentage point increase, so they continue to grow. 4th going to 5th was a 2 percentage points of growth. 5th going to 6th, we declined 5%. That is typical across the state. That is not just typical within Greater Albany Public Schools. And I do have something to demonstrate that later on that I added. 6th going to 7th, there was an 8% growth, right? So that cohort did increase. 7th to 8th, again, 2 percentage points increase. And then going into 11th grade year, we don't have that growth pattern, right? But we did show growth from one year to the next of 4%. So outside of that 5th to 6th grade transition, we saw an increase in performance each successive year on cohort data. We do see that. We did adopt a language arts curriculum, K-8. So this is being implemented pretty effectively. Average growth is about 3% on a year, 4% if you're doing well, up to 6% if you are really crushing it, right? And you can see some of those targets hit each year in that cohort data, okay? To get there, in both reading and math, we use iReady diagnostic data. That is our progress monitoring system. We test students when they come in the fall. We do a winter assessment, and then we do a spring assessment. That's a way for our teachers to gauge how our students are starting the year and if they need intervention, how they're progressing in the winter, and then again in the spring. That iReady data in both reading and math is used to put students into small groups if they need intervention, and that's been pretty successful. I was also asked what kind of a predictor that is. So I did look at our spring iReady diagnostic data for English language arts, and it said that 39% of our third graders were at grade level, which means that they would post proficient on the state test. And in the spring OSAS test, 42% of our third graders actually met. So 3 percentage points is a pretty accurate predictor, which is why we've chosen to use iReady Read and iReady Math as our benchmark indicators. Okay. In math, it doesn't look so pretty. We did have some growth in cohorts, but when you look, you'll see that third to fourth was a 1% increase. Fourth to fifth was a decline. Fifth to sixth, again, you see a decline. That is statewide. It may not be as great, but when we do some comparisons, you'll see. Sixth to seventh was an increase of 5%. We dropped one in 8th grade math, but again in 11th, we show a 2% increase. Okay. When we compare statewide, we'll focus on English language arts. Green is good, red is alert, right? Just like you see at the traffic signals. When you look at our overall comparison to state numbers, we show better performance in gaps than statewide numbers show in all but 4th and 6th grade. Okay? No increase in 5th grade. And that's pretty good, especially when you're looking at a 3% difference up to a 10% or 9% difference at 8th and 11th grade. Those are great comparative numbers when you look at our students' performance in comparison to the state. Our teachers have worked really hard to look at the implementation of that reading and language arts curriculum. K-8, it definitely shows, and I anticipate that will show growth in these numbers over the next few years. Math is a little bit of a sticky wicket right now, where we're not performing as well as the state average, except in 5th grade and 11th grade. It's good to show that we're within 5 to 7 points, so we don't have that much of a gap to close in comparison to the state, but we do have some work in math. This is when we get to those those longitudinal projection goals. As I shared earlier, we have all students, we should be growing anywhere from 1 to 4% per year. You see what we need to catch up with our focal groups on a trajectory, and then a stretch goal. This is kind of tough because we don't have new graduation data, so this is very similar to what you saw last year. Once we get that data in January, we can create a better trajectory line for all students. So this really isn't new in the 4-year graduation rate because there's no new data. And the same holds true with the 5-year completion rate. We'll come up with some better accurate growth targets once we get our cohort graduation data in January. Okay? 9th grade on track is much more accurate. For each of these, we set goals from 4% per year to 6% per year. You'll notice that over a 5-year longitudinal timeline for 9th grade on track, we're aiming to have 100% of our students on track to graduate at the end of their 9th grade year. And then with our focal groups of students getting up to 85%, which is at or above state average for all students. Okay? For 3rd grade language arts, We are aiming to, and again, we would love to say we'd be higher than this, but you can't just say we're going to grow 8% every year just because. That's not sustainable growth. So again, we're looking between about 3% for our all-student group each year. We're looking about 2 to 2.5% for our focus groups. And then we're looking at a more aggressive 5% as our stretch goal, which if we really get after it, we may be able to do that. The thing is these students this year in 3rd grade will have been in our schools from the time they were kindergartners. So this group is 100% GAPS taught, 100% GAPS performance, and we hope that we do very well this year with our 3rd grade reading scores. Okay. Our regular attenders, these are students that are attending 90% or better. Again, attendance has been a major focus and will continue to be a major focus because if the student is not in their seat learning on a regular basis, it doesn't matter what we do or present, what interventions we put in place, they have to be in class in order to learn. So again, this is a big focus. I know this is a focus for the board. So we are very intentionally looking at getting students into class 90% or more. Every district needs to have a district improvement plan. Our 3 main goals in our district improvement plan are equitable outcomes and systems for all students, social, emotional, and mental health supports, and rigorous and engaging academics. And when our schools present later in the spring, they will be focusing their work on these 3 goals and what they're doing in schools to achieve these. In order to do this, each of our schools form an annual school improvement plan. Our elementary levels, they must set a reading growth goal, a math growth goal, and then they can choose their 3rd goal of choice. It could be attendance, it could be family engagement. That's based on what each of the schools need as decided upon by their leadership team and input from students and parents. Middle schools must set a reading and a math goal and either an attendance or a behavior goal. Attendance, very clear. Behavior would be that they're putting systems in place to reduce the number of behavior incidents they would have as measured by a referral system. And then high schools are 9th grade on track, graduation, and then advanced course enrollment. Those are courses that carry college articulated credit, advanced placement courses. What are elementary schools doing and how are they measuring that? Like I said earlier, we're looking at iReady reading and math data, attendance data. They perform, teachers perform a DESA evaluation, which is social emotional competencies of students in their class, looking at behavior referrals and safe and civil schools survey. And then these are our priority actions. All of our elementary schools are successfully utilizing an MTSS system for both behavior, attendance, and academic performance. A big priority of ours, as Superintendent Gardner explained, is implementing the CEL 5D and 5D Plus system. Safe and civil schools is what we use to set our universal expectations in our elementary schools. There is an advisory component. They're doing SEL instruction. QTEL, you may have heard that, Quality Teaching for English Learners. It's specific structure for lessons and lesson design. This year, with Kelsey and our EDI department, we're going to be implementing an equity cohort at Periwinkle. And what that's going to look like is structuring a structured equity team, looking at how instruction takes place in classrooms to make sure it's culturally responsive. It'll look at school policies and procedures to ensure that they are equitable, and then how we're engaging our families in the community. And then, as I shared earlier, there'll be an attendance pilot. Waverly and Sunrise will be year 2, and Oak will be year 1. At our middle schools, again, they're looking at reading and math iReady benchmark assessments throughout the course of the year, attendance, behavioral referrals, and our safe and civil schools survey. And then much like the elementary schools, you'll see very similar priority actions. What's being added at the middle schools is we're going to focus on affinity groups. through our EDI department. We're going to start looking more intently at restorative practices. North Albany Elementary School is going to be engaged in that equity cohort, and they've done a significant amount of work around restorative practices within their school, especially in their advisory program. They do community circles. Their staff is really invested in that, and that translates to how we're working through behavioral situations. And that doesn't mean that students won't be held accountable or sent home when needed. It just means what that looks like when they get re-entered into the school community coming back. We're not going to suspend behaviors out of kids. That's not necessarily effective all the time. It means that we are going to hold kids accountable, which may mean suspension, but we are going to break down behaviors and reintegrate them back into the school community effectively so they aren't doing the same thing over and over again. I'm a firm believer in accountability, but there needs to be accountability with restoration when the students come back. As I shared earlier, all 4 of our middle schools will be working with that attendance pilot, Calapooya Memorial in year 2, NAMS and Timber Ridge year 1. High schools in action, they're going to be looking at grades, credits earned, attendance, behavioral referrals, enrollment in advanced level courses, and we'll be doing some more student surveys this year at Southwest and Albany Options. And then our big priority actions are listed here. We'll be working with the Center for High School Success to establish some more structured systems for 9th grade on-track work. Our schools will continue to implement the AVID program. And then South Albany High School is going to be our high school equity cohort group. And that's it. Any questions? It's a lot of information.
I do.
Brad?
So Bruce, I noticed that the first year we took on 2 elementaries and 2 middle schools, and then this year we're going to only add in 1 elementary.
Yeah.
Do we just don't feel like we don't have the staff to do 2, or?
The work that gets done is there's an attendance interventionist that will work at that school. So some of it is to do with some more intensive staffing and work on that level. We're not going to force necessarily people to be involved in a pilot program when we just had year 1 of that. As we tease through this year and establish some systems, we'll look to grow that out in a more systematic way with all of our elementary schools in the future. The other thing is we're looking at our schools that have a higher need for attendance intervention. So we're looking at that data and which schools might be able to capitalize most with that pilot program.
Well, I agree with that, but we're seeing positive results, and so,
Yeah.
and like you said, kids in classrooms is
Absolutely.
everything. Yeah, so I
You
was just
bet.
hoping that we could maybe get 1 more in there, but,
Right.
okay. Also, page 11, the cohort academic growth ELA chart.
Yes, let me go back there.
And I don't know if
Right
it's,
here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my understanding or whatnot, but if you look at, for example, 5th grade level is 47% in 22-23, and then 47% in 23-24, yet there's a 2% change.
That's what you're looking at on that 2%. It must be just there's an arrow. It's looking at.
Step down. You're stepping down. You're
You're
following the
stepping
green.
down. So you're
Oh, I
looking
see.
at
So you go catty corner.
45
Okay.
in 22-23 is 4th graders to 47 is 5th, which is the 2% change.
got
So
it.
it's
Okay.
the flow of the color that you have to look at. That's
Thank
kind of
you.
confusing.
That's where I got
I'm
lost.
sorry
I appreciate-
about
That's
that.
okay. No.
Yes.
So, and just to emphasize, the test that they take as 5th graders is not the same test. We're not just 2% on the same test. They have moved up to a higher test, and yet still we improve the number of students, right? So every year there's a set of standards that are assessed.
That helps, 'cause I wasn't following the chart as I was reading it. And
Absolutely.
needed some clarification.
Yeah, looking straight across, so that's why I tried to color code those. And that is confusing. I'll accept that for sure. But I think the important thing is Superintendent Gardner stated out is it's 1 more level of difficulty on test, but you're looking at the same group of kids moving from 1 year to the next. And I think that's really important to look at, because if we literally just go across, it's different different students each year, right?
Sure.
So that's the way that graduation rate is measured at the high school, right? So those students that come in as 9th graders, looking at that 4-year cohort, A buddy of mine in Gresham Barlow, I always respected him quite a bit because he would do that each year with his students. And he worked in a small school, so he was able to look at 8th grade performance coming into 9th grade, because he'd show a huge dip, right? And it's like, what are you starting with as your students, and how do you grow them each year? And I think that's important to look at as a district too.
And so would you guess that the change from elementary to middle school is causing that decline, just because of the culture shock and the?
It is, and that's statewide. So, and I was interested in looking at that, and Bree from NAMS, we had a pretty big conversation this summer after she presented her school improvement plan, and we began to kind of explore that if it was just, hey, why do I see this huge dip from 5th to 6th grade? And then when we started to dig in a little bit more, it's statewide. You're going from a self-contained classroom as an elementary student, going into a larger school with more students. You're switching, might have 7 teachers a day, depending upon the model that's used at the middle school. And then you're reading to learn content at that point in time. So there's exams, there's homework, there's more responsibility placed on students. And just like we see that transition from middle school to high school also, which is why we focus so intently on that 9th grade year.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 2 questions real quick.
All right, Sean.
So over the past couple of years, we've seen a big difference between, it looks like the English or the ELA has gone up and the reading numbers have gone up more dramatically than the math. Is that because more of the focus has been put on that subject? And what does that look like going forward?
I think there's a few reasons for that. One is, yes, there's been a big focus put on literacy. The district was able to adopt a new ELA curriculum, which has brought all of the teachers together, focused on the same thing, same scope and sequence, and they've been able to work together to focus on that literacy. We've not been able to purchase that new math curriculum to go through that same process. So I don't believe the fidelity of teaching is the same in math as it has been in English language arts. So it's kind of a twofold function there. Yeah.
Second question, just some clarification on the 5-year completion. Is that 93% of the students that don't complete in 4 years are completing in 5, or is that 93 of the original pool?
It's so you have all of your students that graduate in 4. You keep that next remaining cohort that would go to 5 and finish in 5 years.
Sweet.
Yeah. Absolutely.
A couple. First of all, thank you. There's measurable academic growth goals. I really appreciate it. We've been discussed as part of the agenda, and clearly there's strategies for what the district's going to do to work towards ours. And the schools will come give us their independent ones.
That's correct.
That then flow into these. Perfect.
Right.
Excellent. Great question about the math. I was going to ask the same thing. So what I think I heard you say is the fact that we didn't adopt the math curriculum has led to our poor math scores.
I don't think it's as easy as that.
No, and you very clearly said training as much as the curriculum itself.
So
I get that.
You can't purchase your way out of instruction, right? I think anything it's twofold, right? It's what you're using to teach and then how you're teaching it.
Yeah.
There's been a very intent focus on literacy. One, because we're really shooting to get kids reading at 3rd grade. That is a huge push. And when you couple that with a new curriculum adoption, you're not only focusing on the instructional component of class, but you're focused on everyone teaching the same types of material using strategies, right?
Yeah.
So we haven't had that focus on math. There's good math instruction going on, right? When you look, we're pretty close to state average. We're not that far off. We just haven't seen that growth that we've seen in language arts.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Okay. I think things are looking good. I like it. The math concerns me a lot.
Absolutely.
Not just for us, but for the state. And I don't know if there's a theory as to why we're struggling with math so much.
I don't know enough yet, Ryan. I'm still digging into that personally. Math is a challenge no matter what, right? Because it's super sequential. And any gap that you have gets amplified over the course of time. You can work on catching up in reading and writing, But that math is hard if you continually miss out on those foundational components, right? Because it just layers and it adds
So maybe
on
the
itself.
attendance that we're struggling with ahead.
I mean, you have attendance issues. Conceptually, it's more difficult. And then getting everybody to teach with fidelity, because, I mean, honestly, if I'm a teacher and I have this old curriculum and I'm pulling stuff together of independent resources, I'm going to use what I think works, or what my school grade band think works, or, hey, we're going to use this in the district curriculum and then we're going to supplement with these other things. And that supplementation isn't the same across the district. And that's okay.
Okay.
Right? It's just where we're at right now.
Perfect. And then my last thing is more of a request. So when the schools come and do their presentations and say, hey, this is our goal and these are our priority, how we're doing that, it'd be good to hear why. You know, like, why did
Absolutely.
this school pick these particular ones?
That's right.
What went into that process? So.
What I do want to point out is that when we look at this here, we're going to avoid using a whole series of charts around progress monitoring where we are with iReady Read and iReady Math. We'll give you that data ahead of time for you to look at, but what I believe we're really going to focus on is how we're addressing our district improvement plan through our school improvement plans.
Okay.
Okay? So we're going to do that a little bit more creatively this year. We're going to give you some information ahead of time, and schools are going to get to be able to describe exactly why they chose those goals, how they arrived at what they're doing in their schools, and focus on some of the things they're doing in classrooms and within their entire school community.
Good.
Okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
For me, I guess it's just, first off, thank you for sharing. That's really good. It helps us know where we are. Something that I've noticed over the last 3 years being here is we always seem to have kind of be behind the state numbers in ninth grade on track. And yet our graduation rates are really high, you know, compared to on-state, you know. So, you know, my thoughts on that is obviously when they get to the high school, we do a good job getting them ready, you know, and, you know, obviously everyone knows me that the whole middle school grading thing was a big thing for me. I'm hopeful that maybe since we're giving them a little bit more teeth to middle school, that they show up to the high schools and are a little bit better prepared. What would your thoughts, and I'd also like to hear Susie's on that.
That transition, so when you look at that graduation rate, you have one school that has a 97% graduation rate. You have our alternative option for students that is not performing at that state level, and you have South that's somewhere there in the middle, right? That 8th to 9th transition doesn't look the same for everyone, and the amount of work it takes to close that gap over the 4 years is challenging, right? So from a personal experience as a high school principal for a long time, you don't want to constantly be chasing the credit recovery beast, right?
Right.
The better services you have for ninth graders coming in, whether that's summer transition options, whether that's building houses or cadres of teachers, you know, a math, a science, a language arts teacher that are working together with smaller groups of students to, you know, intervene earlier and to teach those success skills. It may look different at each of the schools. The other thing that you have to look at in the ninth grade on track is by the sheer numbers at West, because of the block schedule, students could fail 4 classes and still be on track, where at South they could only fail 2 over the course of the year. So you're comparing apples to oranges if you're chasing numbers, so to speak, right?
But we kind of fixed that problem this year.
Well, just by the sheer mathematics of it, yes, but that still doesn't mean that you have students that are being set up for success. I personally am about systems, about monitoring student growth and progress over the course of time, about early intervention, and about making sure students are known, understood, and have trusted adults that they can go to, and you're building in systems of support along the way. The other thing you can look at is there's also the national norm, not just the Oregon State norm, where it's students are not considered on track with D's, right? So you can look at a high-performing school and identify what's that next iteration for us in terms of success. Students that are earning fewer Ds or achieving at a higher rate have greater access to higher quality colleges and universities, scholarships. They become competitive at that Ivy League level, the UC level, or earning higher placement options going to University of Oregon or Oregon State. So it's not just about the quote-unquote on track, it's about how do we set our students up for even more success when we're starting at a higher baseline level. So when we look at a school like West that's a phenomenal achiever, what does that next level of improvement look like? So it's just different measures of success, right?
Sure. Susie?
So I would just tell you, first of all, you saw in the test scores, those transitions, anytime you're going from elementary to middle school, from middle school to high school, those are big transitions. And I believe, just like Bruce, it's the systems that we have in place. And I believe in ninth grade on track, but I also believe that it's a hard transition and that you have to put systems in place for those students who maybe aren't as successful as ninth grade. And by the time they're a senior, they're pretty proud of the growth that they've made in those 4 years. And teachers work really hard to make sure that they're being successful in those study skills classes and all those things that mentors, that one kind caring adult make a huge difference in those 4 years. And that's why you see graduation rates are higher than when they come in transition. I think it's just a hard time to go from elementary to middle school. It's a big change to go from middle to high school. It's a big change, and it always has been.
Right.
It's not a new phenomenon.
Okay, hey, thank you.
I have
Oh.
a question about that. I mean, first, I'm getting in a conversation with people who know much more about this subject matter than I do, but I'm going to try it. So it seemed to me that when you've seen the learning challenges at one school, of all the schools we have in this term, you've seen the learning challenges of one school. That they're not the same across the board. And I get concerned about, I mean, we all want to improve test scores. We all want it, but the unique challenges that from school to school are faced are outside of a systems-based model, are they not?
If I understand what you're saying.
And I won't be insulted when you tell me I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, each school faces unique challenges. The challenges that Waverly faces is very different than challenges that Oak Grove might face, right? We're looking for achievement for all students, but each one of those schools is extremely unique. When you look at a school that's extremely high poverty and is a Title I school like Waverly or Sunrise, right? You're facing different challenges and battles, right? The behaviors look different because students are coming to school with very different skills on what we would call ready to learn. When we talk to some of our principals and students are showing up that are not potty trained yet, and we're facing challenges of changing students at 5 years old, that's a very distinct difference in need of a school versus what other schools in the district might face. So when you're talking about systems, you're talking about systems of getting kids to school first, then prepared and ready to learn in situations where they may not know what it's like to function as a student in a school. So now you're just teaching them what it means to sit down at carpet time, or what it means to sit in a desk, and what it means to socialize in a school setting. And then on top of that, we're gonna teach you how to read, right? So those systems of what that looks like in different schools is very different. We were asked specifically by one of our community members about the scores at Waverly, right? And schools in In situations like that, they receive title funds, which are additional federal dollars based on poverty, of which Waverly gets. And then based on test scores, they'll get even more additional federal dollars for support. And it's, targeted improvement dollars. In Waverly's case, I do want to address that specifically. We did purchase additional math curriculum and a math intervention system for students at Waverly, along with some more intensive staff support. There's an additional instructional coach that's been hired through title dollars. And then through some of our federal assistant monies, we have additional SEA support at Waverly. And that kind of goes along with what each of those schools needs and gets in additional monies. So all of our title schools are looking to add that additional math support and staffing because Director Nyquist, as you stated, each one of those schools is extremely unique.
Thank you.
You bet.
One more question, and maybe it's for Susie. I know you did it at one point in time, some time ago, but fifth grade is a bad time to be going to middle school, and ninth grade is a bad time to becoming an incoming freshman. Were we better off when a junior high and high school system where both of those were 3-year programs instead of moving kids from fifth up to fifth graders and eighth graders? There's a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference between a 14-year-old entering high school and a 17 or 18-year-old. Is that?
Are you referring to when elementaries had sixth graders?
Right.
And then you
Right.
had junior highs of 7, 8, 9, and
Right.
high schools were 10, 11, 12. I came from a system like that in California. I was a student in a 9-12. I taught in a system that kept ninth graders as part of a junior high. The difference between a 7th and 9th grader is pretty big also. I personally feel that middle school model of 6-8 is ideal. And you can make that school smaller than what it appears and make that transition a little bit easier based on how your middle schools are organized. If you have teams that are set up and grade level teams that house those sixth graders, a separate sixth grade lunch, you build in a humanities block and make those periods longer for sixth graders so there's fewer transitions. There's ways to make that transition a little easier.
Just at the high school level, it just seems that there's a lot of different activities going on
Yes.
between an incoming freshman and a senior, a lot of difference in the maturity
Right.
levels. I
So
don't
what?
know.
So what you get at is you can establish that same house system at the high school as you would have in a middle school model, where you have core teachers, an English, a math, and a science teacher that all have the same group of students. So you have more closely monitored students, and as Susie said, that trusted adult that knows me, that adult I can go to, is a huge difference. And I know that she had set some of those systems up at West a long time ago. And that's kind of where we're going to be looking to get to.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, a 14-year-old boy is going to make some blunders, right? Because they're just 14-year-old boys. We were all 14, well, you and I were 14-year-old boys. Shoot, I'm 55 and I still make knucklehead mistakes, right? It's just a huge transition and a huge challenge around that maturity level.
Okay. So it wasn't better when we did it the other way. It just feels like it from here. I get it. Thanks. I just still the thought of, at a high school level, half of the students or more have cars or they're driving, and now you're adding a group of younger people in there, and we see at the juvenile department some problems that creates, and we'll just go with that.
Okay. Hey, next up, new business, board policy, EBCA. Jane, looks like you got this one.
Yes. So this is a new legal requirement on communication on the part of the district. If there is a safety threat action, which means there would be a lockdown, a secure, or a shelter in place, then we have communication requirements. And this is a first reading of this policy. And the communication has to include a general description of what's going on, the duration of the time, the actions taken by the school or district, and an explanation of how the situation was resolved. So there's 4 components of the communication that's required.
We typically do that. In the last couple of years, we've had a secure once in a while, like every month and a half or so. Typically, though, we have not communicated in that detail. And if there is a secure in a neighborhood because of a suspect who is yet to be identified or located, then that would be something typical that we might just communicate as well, more specifically. It does say that it goes to the parents within 24 hours and also to staff.
Okay. Questions on that? Roger?
What about our interface with the Albany Police Department and who's making what communication when?
So I think we will need to rely on them for a little bit more detail. I'm not sure, we're not always privy when the police do tell a school that they need to secure because something may be happening in the neighborhood, and we're gonna have to do that now, and we will be asking for them to communicate with us just very shortly, the rationale why they've done that. Very often, those are lifted within an hour, within 10 minutes, but we will still need to know what happened in the neighborhood that caused it.
So my observation is there's been a couple times where, as a team,
Yeah.
the district and the Albany Police Department didn't work as cohesively as they could to communicate with a very concerned public.
And we have, Becca is now directly in contact with that person. We'll make sure that is, but I think a lot of times we're gonna be training the police officers as well. They have to give us, they can't just say, hey, we're gonna go on secure for a little bit. We need to know why so we can communicate that out.
So this is not just the school, it's when APD says you guys need to go into it, this is the policy for regardless.
We've always responded to their request when they tell us that.
But I mean, that's what I mean, does the policy apply to all that? Like, because it says when the school initiates it, but you're saying if APD initiates it, also, the policy applies.
We generally don't issue a secure unless we are directed to do so by the
Right, that's what I
police.
thought, that's what I thought, but it
Okay.
says,
Yeah.
school initiated, so.
It does not include drills.
Okay.
So it's any time outside of a planned drill.
Okay, so it says school initiated, but those are always a result of law enforcement requests, okay.
Any other questions on that for Jane? Okay, this is just first reading, so we'll go on to the next one. L1B KBA, Andy.
So this just modifies the public records request. The district already has this policy. It provides a further and more specific definition of those records. What they are, writing means handwriting, typewriting, all those things. Does not include any writing that does not relate to the conduct of the public's business. And there is also added in here that we will, at the district's cost, overcome any disability, right? So if someone requests something, it would be at the district's cost for someone with a disability that may keep them from just benefiting from us sending them a bunch of documents. They may need some help, that would come at the district's cost.
Any questions for Andy on that?
I'll ask that between now and the next reading, if that's okay. I do have
Sure.
one, but
Okay, no future agenda items, other business, we don't have any. I'm looking for O.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We're done. Thank you, everybody.
But still, schools will absolutely